Hey YouTube, welcome back. In last week's video, we got our wall recesses cut and fitted in. Now we can get started on feeding some wires through the van for our electrical setup. If our batteries are the heart of the van, then think of them like the veins, spreading all across the van. But before that, we quickly need to build our kitchen overhead. Hey, if you're new here, we're Ben and Shelley, and we're in the process of building our dream home on wheels. It's not our first van, but this one's bigger, smarter, and a little bit fancy. So far we've soundproofed and insulated, fitted ceiling fans and water tanks, built the ultimate pull-up bed, and sort of the full off-grid electrical setup. With Shelley's dad Terry helping out on the tools, we're slowly piecing together our ultimate off-grid van, one project at a time.
Right, in order to get a nice curve up against the roof, we're going to have to scribe this in. So what you do is you measure how much gap, maximum gap there is from the flat edge, and then you get a piece and you run it along with a pencil. We'll show you now.
Bubble in the roof there.
This one?
There. That on both sides, so about where we are.
So we've got a little piece of timber and a pencil and drag it along, and it'll show the curve up on here, and then that's what we scribe or cut out afterwards.
Here's a quick guide to scribing. So you've got your curve that you're trying to cut a piece to fit into. If you get a small block, like so, and follow the curve with the block. As you go, you trace the line from the base, which is basically a copy of the curve, which you then cut off the main piece, meaning your new piece will now fit.
So this little piece with a pencil underneath goes across the top, and as you can see here, we've got our line across and we can jigsaw it out or use the table, what's this new tool we've got? Bandsaw, tape, it's a table jigsaw, an upright jigsaw, to cut it out so we've got the shape, so it fits snug against the roof because nothing in a van is square.
As I'm sure you can hear, we've got another summer storm happening, and it's a big one. Terry's getting soaked.
Yeah, give it a go.
LDV vans, there is an overhead compartment above the cab, which is great for storage. We just wanted to make it a bit bigger. This sits over our kitchen, so we'll call it the kitchen overhead. We built out a base about 30 centimeters from the edge of the current overhead and screwed it into both the walls and the van and back into the overhead.
The following Thursday.
Welcome back to another day in the van builds. We have finished everything that we need to finish to start the wiring. So we've got all the carcasses done, everything is laid out in their places so we know where we need to wire. We've drawn up. Everything is highlighted, what needs electricity to it. So now we're going to plan out what to wire, what sizes. We found this calculator online. I'll put the link up above here. So obviously the further away from the battery, the more energy that's lost as it goes from electricity from A to B, the closer it is
more
current draw. Yeah. As you go for a longer period, you need a thicker cable so there's less current draw lost, as opposed to if it's right next to it, you can get away with a thinner cable. So we're working out all our gauge sizes right now. So you need to know like how big of a draw each element is. So for example, we're going to need to run quite a large cable right over to that back corner over there, because that's going to be where our water heater is, which is 200 watts. So that's quite a lot of draw, that one. Our fridge being 12 volt, that's pretty minimal. And then the only thing over in that kitchen, we've designed this really well, will be there's some 240 so mains plugs over there, and then everything else is going to be by this desk area and hopefully need quite minimal length of cabling. So let's figure it all out. Okay, so what we've done is we've pulled these 3 cables through the conduit onto the other side. Once that's through, we're gonna mark them on either end, right? You can either put a label, but we think that might get less lost. So we're just gonna, we've permanent marked what they're for. So whether it's for the fridge, the diesel heater, water heater, pump, etc. Then one comes up inside where our battery box is, underneath the van, and up to this other end here. So if you can see, this is where our conduit is going to come up. We've got 2 holes there, and this is going to go behind and power the kitchen. It's going to go underneath here, and like magic, come up through our 2 little holes and our conduit in our battery box. And then it'll come up through there and hook onto a fuse box, like so. So all the wires need to be correctly labelled so you know what all of them are running. Once the walls and the rest of the insulation is on, it comes up through into the battery area, whether that's through the side or underneath. We're going different ways depending on where it's coming from, and then it's coming up to a focal point, which will then go into a fuse box, and then we'll know what everything is. So make sure you have everything labelled, and like I said before, have your plan ready to go.
We've got water tanks, solar, a fridge and cooktop, lights, USB points and plugs. All of these need their own wires, and after lots of head scratching and looking at wiring diagrams, fuse capabilities and cable thickness, Shelley and Terry had come up with a plan of attack and knew exactly how and where all the cables and wires were going to run around the van and what size everything needed to be.
But of course we have a battery in here.
We made a mistake. We forgot to label these before we put them in the conduit, and now there's 2 of the same size.
We've got a continuity tester. I just don't know where mine is. It's probably in there somewhere. But of course we have a battery set up here running the fans. We have a 12-volt power source. So all you need is a test light.
Come on, first time.
This is the pump. Pump. That's the pump one, Shell. So either change that or change this end. I don't care which end.
So we're feeding it up through here, across, and down out here, and down to the batteries. This was a pain to get through, big tug of war game, and it's not long enough to reach our power point that plugs into mains from this side over there and the cooktop.
So we got to pull it all out and do it again.
I don't know how we thought we were giving ourselves plenty, but apparently we weren't.
Right.
So a trick to make things a bit easier is to get something a bit harder. What is this, Dad?
Well, this is actually the strip out of yellow tongue flooring.
So you can see that is less flexible, and then we tape these to the yellow bit, and they go through, and this is not as flexible. So basically, to get things through the hole, everything is all on an angle. You can see the conduit coming through. So if we put the yellow thing something a bit harder, tape it to that can go through and kind of be like a lead piece, and then you can pull it through a lot easier. Just trying to make it a little bit easier because very small space. We've got to try to fit a lot in there. Good morning. Welcome to another day in this everlasting van build. Feels like it's taking forever. But we are finally finished the wiring. Well, almost. We have one little section to go because nothing's ever quite finished. And we're going to explain to you why you wire, where everything's going, and what you need to have done if you're ready to get to this point in your van build. So wiring is something I honestly didn't even know existed or needed doing before, I mean, maybe like a week ago. I thought this was all involved when you do the electrical, but obviously all this wiring and everything has to go in behind the walls and behind our third level of insulation. So what we've done with insulation on this fan is we've gone with the 3-stage car builders pack. You can check out the video on that, we'll link it up here, but we've got the, what's it called? Rattle resistant words aren't coming to me. Thanks Ben. The sound deadening behind it, the 10mm insulation, and then we're going to put a thermal barrier across all of this as well. And then on top of that, we're going to put the walls. So before you even get to this stage, you need to have your van layout completely finalized. So we've actually made all of the desk area, all of the bed area, and all of our kitchen area. Woo! Coffee hasn't kicked in yet today, but everything is made for our van. So our recesses are in ready to go, so that way we knew where we could wire within the walls. So why is it important to have everything finalized? Because you need to know where to run the wires. So for example, this one is for one of our overhead lights, and we're also going to map out, because this is going to be completely covered in a thermal liner and B, the roof. We're going to map out, so measure from the fan or whatever point you can to here, and whatever that is, it's about 200 mil. No, that's like 400, I'm bad. So we know where to cut the hole and we're not cutting the wrong thing. So everything needs to be completely mapped out and everything that you want. So let me explain to you what wiring we've got and what we're actually powering in this very, very electrical savvy van we've got going on. Welcome to our main hub of electrical wiring. So in here, we'll overlay a picture, but this is where our main battery hub is going. So we're going to have our iTechworld batteries and our inverter, DC, MPPT. There's something else in there and some other little things. All of our electrical setup will be in another video, but basically all of this is going to run into a fuse box, and everything red and black is our 12-volt wires. So they all need different gauges. So that depends on the wattage or ampage of each system. So for example, the lights run a very low ampage, so they don't need a huge thick wire, whereas something like our DC, this is our DC, is very thick, and we needed an 8 gauge for this one because it's going to run from here all the way across up to our alternator of the car. But it can't just run across the floor because this is our actual wet area of our shower, and the way it's going to run is through here and here, so it's actually quite a long length. So to work all of this out, there's a whole bunch of calculators. We'll link a few up on the screen and below, but basically you need to map out. So I've got a really good spreadsheet going on of every electrical appliance that we're using and its ampage or wattage. So to get watts into amps, you divide by 12. Then to get your fuse size, which you also need to know, you times it by 1.5. So for example, a 40 amp hour DC charger times by 1.5, we need a 60 amp hour fuse on that. So that's pretty simple, but to measure all of these wire sizes, there's a bunch of different calculators online. You need to know your ampage or wattage of the appliance, the length of cable, because the longer the length of cable, there is voltage loss across time, so the shorter the better. So that's why this is our hub, and everything is trying to stay as close to the batteries as possible, because the less length of wire, the better it is in the long run. So one of our main sources, and probably our most important source, is our solar. So on our roof we've got three 200 watt solar panels. Words really aren't coming to me today. 3 200 watt massive solar panels on the roof, and they are going to run down through this roof through a conduit. So a conduit is this little white grey stuff, and it just helps protect the wires and keeps them safe, especially because in a van everything is moving around. You don't want the wires to just be hanging around loose in the walls of the van. So the conduit helps protect it, but it also allows, if anything goes wrong or in the future, you can run the wires back through and know where you're going without pulling the entire van apart. So our solar is super important. It is coming down from the roof through a hole in the roof into some little grommets up here, down through the conduit. This is our solar panels, and then they are going to go hook straight in to our MPP charger, which is the solar regulator, which then a wire goes from the MPPT into the batteries to charge the batteries. If you really want an in-depth look into our electrical system, that'll be a complete other video. This is purely just about the wiring and the stage you have to be at to wall your van. And yeah, this is the stage I didn't know existed and is actually super, super complicated. So make sure you pay attention or do your research properly. Other things to note in our wiring setup here is these ones coming up through the bottom. So there is a whole bunch of new rules with lithium batteries. So they need to be vented properly and in a container that isn't easily accessible. So I can't just have a hinge on it. So they're going to go down here, but we've got vent holes down here to vent them properly. And these ones coming up allowed us to go underneath the van to go zoink to this area, which is the kitchen, instead of going up and around, which is coming into the length of the cable is going to be a lot longer. So because they're going under the van, really important to have it in conduit. So things that are going over to the kitchen area will be our DC, things that are 12 volt that are going over to our kitchen area will be our DC, our hot water system, which is a big fat gauge because it takes 200 watts. So that's a massive system. We are wiring that up as a switch on it, so it just automatically charges while we're driving, so it doesn't drain our battery when it's just everyday life. We can have a booster switch to turn it on, but it's basically just gonna charge while we're driving, and we hope that keeps it up to scratch. It's a bit of trial and error with that water heater. The other thing is our fridge, so that goes over there. One massive thing to note when you're wiring, label absolutely everything on both ends. This makes sense to us when it's in here because you can see where it's running from. But when this is closed in and the wall and the boxes are all in, you just get a pile of wires like this and you have no idea where they're coming from. So label absolutely everything. The other things we've got is things for our lights, our fans, our side fan, our Sirocco fan, and our lights over here. So some of our wires are going right up over the top and down here. This is for our lights that are going to go in this recess, and then we've got stuff mapped out for our lights and our fans up here. Yeah, like I said, you just have to have everything mapped out. This is going to be different in absolutely every van. But yeah, I hope that makes a little bit of sense. So all these red and black wires are 12 volt, which you are allowed to do on your own. You might see red and pink wire, or we've got another yellow wire here. Wire string. These are just false strings. So what we've done is we've left extra space in case we want to add any electricals or change anything in the future. So what you can do is you can tape your wire through it and pull it through without pulling the roof apart. So that's really important just for longevity, and again, in case we've missed anything, although this is really, really well thought out, I think. In addition to the red and black wires, so these are an earth, a positive and a negative wire, so you need both. We did get it all in twin core, so it's stuck together. You can get them separately. It's easier to get in twin core, and we bought everything just from JCar, so that was easy. These white wires, now this is your 240, so this is your main power. So for things such as our GPOs, so our plugs, and our cooker, they're the only things we are hard wiring as 240 in this van, and these have to be installed by a licensed electrician. All we've done is run the wires and cut them to size. We've got a large and a medium wire, put them across, and we will get an electrician in to come and install those properly. So in our desk area, we're going to have a power point here so we can charge our laptops, and if you come over to this kitchen area, ta-da, I'm in the kitchen. This is going to be another power point here, and then in here what we're going to have is a drawer that pulls out, and it's going to have a proper coffee machine and an air fryer in here that obviously needs mains power. And then here is our induction cooker, and that needs mains power. So in order for these items to work, the inverter, which is 3000 watts, will have to be turned on. You want this inverter to have an external remote, which we do, because an inverter on all the time draws a lot of extra power. 12 volt is much more efficient for camper vanning and batteries. So the biggest thing power will draw will be our cooking appliances, our water heater, and of course our laptop chargers. In addition to mains, so a normal plug 240 for our laptop chargers, I invested in some high quality 65 watt 12 volt chargers, so the inverter doesn't have to be turned on, and that will charge my laptop. It will maintain charge on Ben's laptop if he's using it. He's got top spec MacBook Pro, so most laptops it'll run perfectly fine. Does charge Ben's just a bit slower. I've got a MacBook Air and it charges it while I'm using it in no time. So they will be really good. I think that's everything wiring and electrical. So the last steps we've got to do is just map everything out, do an excellent diagram, and make sure excellent diagram of everything that we've got, so when it's covered we know where absolutely everything is, so we're not going to make mistakes, drill into the wall in the wrong spot, have to put a whole new panel on.
No, that's wrong.
Or drill in through and ruin some wires. So everything needs to be really thought out in this stage. It's really complicated and nitpicky, and it's just one of those tasks that take a lot longer than you'd realize. Your best friend will be a spreadsheet mapping everything out for yourself. We'll link all the things in the description below to the calculators you need and the calculations, so you know your wattage, your ampage, and your fuse size, as well as your cable size. It's really important. With the cable size, we ended up just going with 3 cables, so a small, medium, and a large. So I think off the top of my head, we went 10 gauge, 8 gauge, and 6 gauge. And if you just went bigger for something, that's way better. You don't want to underdo it, but you can overdo it. The only problem is it costs you more and it's a little bit more weight. Hopefully this makes sense. Another challenge we had, in doing the wiring, was fitting everything in the conduits and the holes, because it looks like there's a lot of space, but there actually isn't. So we just bought the right drill bit to drill the holes in through the van and run them up from the roof, in from the floor, and everywhere we needed them to go. Everything is looking really neat and tidy, and soon enough we should have power. So all this wiring is in. Our next step is to insulate, put the walls in. All this cabinetry is being painted. Ben's been painting all week, putting his art degree to good use, and then we're going to put it in. So there's a few ways you can plan your van build. You can do your wiring before you've done any of the cabinetry, but we did all the cabinetry, just false put it in with a few screws to take it out, so that way we knew exactly where the wiring was going and we weren't going to make any mistakes, and in case we changed our mind of our design throughout, because when we've been making the cabinetry, our measurements and everything were all off in what our first estimation was. So I would definitely recommend having all your cabinetry, all the carcasses and bare bones in, so you can measure exactly where all the wires need to go, because once the walls are on, this isn't something you can change. So really, really finalize your design, layout, and all your electrics before you get to this stage, and happy wiring. We'll catch you on the next one. Okay, so that wraps up our wiring video in this extremely electric heavy van. I hope it all makes sense. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions, suggestions, and we'll catch you on the next one, when this van is going from looking like a shell of a van to having everything in, and I think it's going to be our biggest transformation yet. See you then.
If you want to get started on planning your own van build, be sure to check out Vanspace. It's a very practical and user-friendly piece of 3D software that allows you to choose your make of van from hundreds of different models and drag and drop items in, such as sinks, shelves, and beds, giving you a real sense of how your van can look and how things will fit in place. Click the link in the description below if you want to give it a try.